The skyscraper glistened under the morning sun like a monument to ambition. Sterling and Harlow Consulting, 12 floors of glass, marble, and quiet power. Inside, the air smelled faintly of polished wood and designer perfume. The people who worked there didn't walk. They glided. At the reception desk sat Ava Thompson, 32, perfectly composed in a tailored gray suit. Her hair was smooth, her nails manicured, her smile professional but practiced, the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was one of the company's top recruiters, known for her eye for talent. In truth, her eye was sharper at recognizing pedigree than potential. She believed in presentation. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. A tall man stepped out, Darius King. Early 30s, calm presence, steady posture. His suit wasn't designer, but it was neat. His shoes were polished, his expression thoughtful. He carried a simple brown portfolio. No flash, no ego. Ava glanced up, her expression barely changing. "Good morning," she said briskly. "You must be Mr. King?" "Yes, ma'am." He offered a polite smile and a firm handshake. "Thank you for seeing me." She nodded toward the glass conference room. "Right this way." They entered the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A single table between them. Ava took her seat, flipping through the printed resume she'd already scanned in her mind. "So," she began in that soft but assessing tone of hers, "you're applying for the senior business consultant position." "Yes," Darius said calmly. "I've been leading growth strategies for small and mid-sized firms for the past 8 years. My last company," Ava interrupted with a polite, clipped smile. "Oh, right, the startup. King Solutions, correct? Not a name I recognize." He nodded. "It was my own firm. We helped small businesses secure partnerships with larger corporations." "Ah," she said, pen tapping lightly. "So, you were self-employed?" Darius hesitated, sensing the subtext. "Yes, for most of my career. Built a good team, scaled operations, and sold the company 2 years ago." Ava's brow arched. "Sold? To whom?" "Weldon Industries," he replied. "They acquired us for our logistics software." Ava blinked. Weldon Industries was one of their clients. But instead of being impressed, she smiled tightly. "That's interesting. You must be quite the entrepreneur." "I like solving problems," Darius said simply. Ava leaned back slightly, evaluating him. "I see. But this environment is very fast-paced, very polished. We work with top-tier executives, CEOs, investors, legacy clients. It's important that our consultants fit our image." Darius met her eyes, calm and unflinching. "And what kind of image is that, exactly?" Her smile didn't falter. You know, corporate presence, refined communication style, cultural alignment. You understand." He did. He understood perfectly. The rest of the interview played out like a slow unraveling. Her tone professional but cold. Her questions cutting deeper than they needed to. Every time he spoke of innovation, she countered with pedigree. Every time he mentioned results, she mentioned culture fit. When it ended, Darius stood, extending his hand again. "Thank you for your time." Ava hesitated just half a second too long before shaking it. "Of course. We'll be in touch." He nodded, then left the room quietly, his steps even, his head held high. As the door clicked shut behind him, Ava let out a soft sigh, closing his resume folder. "Not the right fit," she murmured. "Too independent." Outside, Darius walked down the polished hallway, his reflection trailing him in the glass walls. He had been here before. Not this building, but this moment. Judged not by his ability, but by the filter through which others saw him. He paused by the elevator, pressing the button with steady fingers. His jaw tightened slightly. Not in anger, but in determination. Because what Ava didn't know was that Darius King wasn't just looking for a job. He was evaluating them. And before long, she'd learned that the man she dismissed wasn't another hopeful candidate, but someone who could change her entire company's future. The elevator doors closed with a quiet ding. The morning after Darius King's interview, Sterling and Harlow buzzed with its usual energy. Polished voices echoing through glass hallways, the faint scent of espresso, the glow of ambition in every corner. For Ava Thompson, it was another busy day. A dozen interviews, 2 hiring calls, and 3 pending offers. She moved through her tasks like clockwork, efficient and confident. She sat at her desk, reviewing the previous day's candidate notes on her sleek monitor. Her cursor hovered over Darius King's name. She skimmed through his resume again. Harvard Business School references? None. Fortune 500 experience? Minimal. Network connections? Unknown. Her lips pressed together slightly. Good guy, she murmured, but not sterling material. Across the open office, her assistant, Lena, rolled her chair over. That's the entrepreneur, right? The one who ran his own company? Ava nodded. Yes, but his presentation was a little off. Confident, but not corporate. We need polish. Clients expect a certain image when they see a sterling consultant walk into the room. Lena frowned. He had strong results, though, and Weldon Industries bought his company. That's pretty big. Ava gave a thin smile. Anyone can get lucky once. But this firm doesn't run on luck. It runs on reputation. With that, she opened the HR template folder, selected rejection email, professional tone, and began to type. Dear Mr. King, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with other candidates whose experience more closely aligns with our current needs. We wish you the best in your career pursuits. Sincerely, Ava Thompson, Senior Talent Acquisition, Sterling and Harlow Consulting. She read it once, nodded, and hit send. It took all of 8 seconds. Then she closed the tab, crossed Darius's name off her list, and moved on to the next resume. The kind that began with Ivy League schools and ended with pristine recommendations. For Ava, it was just another morning. But across town, in a quiet workspace filled with warm light and exposed brick, Darius King sat at his desk, reviewing investment proposals on his laptop. The sound of the email notification chimed softly. He clicked it open, read the message once, then twice. There was no anger in his face, only that same calm expression from the interview. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. Then a small smile curved his lips. Not bitter, but knowing. He closed the email, opened a new tab, and typed Sterling and Harlow Consulting, Investor Relations, into the search bar. A few clicks later, he was scrolling through their quarterly financial report. The company was profitable, but not as strong as its reputation claimed. Revenue had stagnated. Client retention was dipping. Looks polished on the outside, he murmured, but fragile underneath. He sat forward, scanning line after line of numbers, graphs, and performance summaries. His sharp eyes caught patterns quickly. Wasteful spending, shallow strategy, over-reliance on outdated clients. He smiled again, this time with quiet purpose. On his desk sat a folder labeled King Equity Partners. Expansion Phase 2. He opened it, flipping to the section marked Strategic Acquisitions. At the top of the list, Sterling and Harlow Consulting. Darius tapped his pen against the folder and whispered to himself, Not the right fit, huh? We'll see. Outside, the city skyline shimmered in the distance, bold, beautiful, and blind to the quiet shift that had just begun. The conference room on the 12th floor of Sterling and Harlow Consulting was reserved for only the most important meetings. Marble table, panoramic city view, digital screens glowing with the company logo. It was the kind of room designed to impress. That morning, it was packed. Senior partners, department heads, and recruiters filled every seat, buzzing with curiosity. Rumor had spread fast. A new investor had bought into the firm, a big one. Ava Thompson sat near the end of the table, her tablet resting neatly in front of her. She'd worn her sharpest blazer, eager to make a good impression. This could mean promotions, she whispered to her colleague. New leadership, new projects, maybe even expansion. The CEO, Richard Harlow, entered, clapping his hands once to quiet the room. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on short notice. He smiled broadly, the kind of smile that meant something monumental was coming. As you all know, he continued, Sterling and Harlow has built a reputation for excellence, and today marks the beginning of an exciting new chapter. We're proud to welcome a strategic investor, someone with deep expertise in business development and a proven record of innovation. He gestured toward the door. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Darius King." For a moment, the room fell completely silent. Then, the doors opened, and Darius stepped inside. The light from the hallway framed him as he entered, poised, calm, confident. He wore a tailored charcoal suit this time. No portfolio, no nervousness. Only presence. Ava froze. Her fingers went still against the tablet. Her breath caught in her throat. He looked exactly as she remembered, except this time, he belonged. The CEO shook his hand warmly. "Mr. King will be joining us as a major investor and strategic partner in our upcoming growth initiatives. His insights and experience will help guide Sterling and Harlow into its next phase of expansion." Polite applause rippled around the room. Ava didn't move. She couldn't. Darius gave a small, professional smile as he addressed the team. "Thank you, Mr. Harlow. It's an honor to be here. I've admired this company for some time. Its talent, its legacy, and its potential." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Calm, steady, unflinching. "But potential," he continued, "only matters when a company knows how to recognize it, in its clients, its markets, and its people." His eyes lingered on Ava for just a second. It wasn't a glare. It wasn't revenge. It was quiet, deliberate acknowledgement. Ava felt her pulse quicken. Her face burned. The CEO clapped again, breaking the tension. "We're thrilled to have you, Mr. King. I'll let you and our recruitment department coordinate on the talent initiatives next week." Darius nodded. "Looking forward to it." As the meeting ended, chairs scraped, voices rose, and people gathered to shake Darius's hand. Ava remained seated, pretending to check her notes, hoping no one noticed her trembling fingers. Her colleague leaned in. "You okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just surprised, that's all." But when Darius finally approached her table, she could barely breathe. "Ms. Thompson," he said softly, "good to see you again." Her throat went dry. "Mr. King, I had no idea." He smiled politely. "Of course you didn't." The words were calm, but they carried weight. A mirror held up to her own voice from that interview room. "I'll be in touch soon," he said, extending a hand. This time she didn't hesitate. She took it, her grip unsure, her smile faltering. When he walked away, she sat there for a long moment, staring at the city skyline beyond the glass. For years, she'd been the one in control, deciding who belonged and who didn't. Now, for the first time, she realized the power of perspective could flip in an instant, and the man she'd once dismissed as not the right fit was now her boss's boss. The morning after the investor meeting, the office buzzed like never before. Everyone was talking about Darius King, the new investor, the entrepreneur who'd sold a tech company, the visionary who had the CEO's full attention. But for Ava Thompson, it wasn't excitement. It was dread. Every time she heard his name whispered in the break room, she felt her chest tighten. Every time she passed a colleague praising his ideas, she remembered that conference room, her words, her tone, her judgment. By noon, she couldn't focus. Her monitor blurred with unread emails and half-written reports. She finally stood, straightened her blazer, and made her way to the 12th floor. The door to Darius's temporary office stood slightly open. She hesitated, just long enough to hear his calm voice inside. "Yes, that's right," he said on the phone. "We'll begin with community partnerships and mentorship pipelines. Let's make sure the recruitment teams are part of the process. I want this company to find real talent, not just what looks good on paper." The words hit her like a quiet strike. She knocked gently. Darius looked up from his desk, setting his phone aside. His expression was unreadable, polite, steady, professional. "Ms. Thompson." "Mr. King," she said softly, stepping inside. "Do you have a moment?" He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Of course." She sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension wasn't hostile. It was heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, she took a breath. "I owe you an apology." Darius's brow lifted slightly. "For what?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "For the interview. For the way I treated you. You came in qualified, professional, and I—" She exhaled, her voice trembling slightly. "I saw what I expected to see. Not who you actually were." Silence. Darius leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "You're not the first," he said quietly. "And you won't be the last. That's the world we live in." I know, she said quickly, but it doesn't make it right. You didn't deserve that. He nodded slowly, his tone calm but firm. You're right, I didn't. But you handled me the way the system trained you to see value in Polish over perspective, image over substance. Ava swallowed hard. That's exactly what I'm realizing. And I hate that I've been part of it. Darius studied her for a moment, not judging, just observing. You can't change what you did, but you can decide what kind of recruiter you want to be now. She nodded, her voice quiet. I want to do better. He smiled faintly, not unkindly. Then start by seeing people before you see their resume. She exhaled shakily. You're giving me more grace than I deserve. Darius's eyes softened, though his expression remained composed. I'm not giving you grace, he said. I'm giving you responsibility. That line hung in the air like a verdict. Not cruel, but transformative. Ava nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. Thank you for hearing me out. Darius gave a small nod. We're going to be working together closely. Let's make it worth something. As she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. Mr. King? Yes? I really am sorry. He met her gaze. I know. She turned and left the office, her heels clicking against the polished floor. But the sound didn't carry the same authority it once had. It carried humility. When the elevator doors closed behind her, Darius sat back, exhaling slowly. He wasn't angry anymore. He'd seen too many moments like this. Moments where pride cracked just enough for truth to get through. He turned back to his window, the city stretching out before him, a skyline full of walls that still needed breaking. And in that quiet moment, Darius King knew one thing for certain. Change didn't happen when you demanded revenge. It happened when you forced people to see. 2 weeks later, Sterling and Harlow Consulting didn't feel like the same place. The sleek marble hallways still gleamed. The suits were still crisp. But something beneath the surface had changed. It started with the King Initiative, Darius's new program focused on redefining recruitment. The goal was simple but revolutionary. Find talent where no one bothers to look. The memo hit every inbox in the company. We will measure success not by polish, but by potential. Not by who fits the mold, but who can reshape it. For Ava Thompson, the irony wasn't lost. She had been chosen, personally, to lead the initiative under Darius's supervision. It was both a punishment and a chance at redemption. When she walked into the first strategy meeting, she found Darius already there, jacket off, sleeves rolled, reviewing reports. The rest of the team was buzzing with energy, younger recruiters eager to impress. He looked up. Good morning, Ms. Thompson. Good morning, she replied, her tone professional but softer than before. He nodded toward a stack of folders. These are the new candidates, diverse backgrounds, some from community programs, some self-taught coders, some with non-traditional work histories. I want you to evaluate them. Ava hesitated. Without filtering for corporate presentation? Darius smiled faintly. Exactly. Pretend you're not recruiting for Sterling and Harlow. Pretend you're looking for thinkers, people who see what others miss. She nodded, though part of her still bristled. Not out of pride, but habit. Hours passed. One by one, they reviewed candidates who, by the old standards, would have been rejected in minutes. Resumes with gaps, schools no one had heard of, experience that didn't fit. But when Ava actually listened to their stories, the obstacles they'd overcome, the ingenuity they'd shown, the hunger to learn, something inside her began to shift. She caught herself leaning forward, asking better questions, hearing depth instead of deficiency. Midway through one interview, she glanced at Darius. He was watching her quietly, not evaluating, just observing. After the candidate left, he asked, "What do you think?" She thought for a moment. He doesn't have the background for this position, she said slowly, but he has the mindset, and maybe that's worth more. Darius smiled. That's the first honest thing you've said all day. She laughed, caught off guard. I guess I'm learning. He nodded. That's what this is for. By the end of the week, Ava's perspective had changed entirely. She found herself defending candidates she would have once dismissed, championing stories that challenged her own bias. One evening, after a long day of interviews, She stopped by Darius's office. He was packing up, the city glowing orange through the window. "You were right," she said simply. He looked up. "About what?" "About me. About how I was trained to see people. I used to think I was good at reading potential. Turns out I was only reading comfort." Darius leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "Most people are. But the difference between good and great isn't how you judge others. It's how you unlearn your own limits." Ava smiled faintly. "You ever get tired of being right?" He chuckled. "Only when people stop listening." They shared a brief silence, not awkward, but meaningful. Finally, Ava said, "You didn't have to let me be part of this project." "I know," Darius said, "but you needed to see what it feels like to open a door instead of closing it." She nodded, her expression softening. "Thank you for opening mine." He gave a small smile. "And we're just getting started." As she left the office, the city lights shimmered against the glass walls, reflecting both of them, the teacher and the student, the judged and the reformer, standing on equal ground for the first time. Ava realized something then. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about learning from it until it stopped owning you. And for the first time, she felt like she was finally becoming the recruiter she'd always pretended to be. 3 months later, Sterling and Harlow was buzzing with preparation for the annual Leadership Forum, the firm's biggest event of the year. Hundreds of employees from across the country gathered to hear strategy updates, financial projections, and leadership speeches about innovation and growth. But this year, there was something new on the agenda, a panel titled Reimagining Recruitment, the Future of Talent. It had been Darius's idea. Ava Thompson sat backstage, nervously tapping her pen against her notepad. Her name was listed right next to his on the program. She'd given dozens of presentations before, but this one was different. This wasn't about selling numbers or bragging about hires. This was about truth. Through the side curtain, she could see the audience, rows of executives, recruiters, and partners, all dressed in the company's trademark navy. They were the same kind of people she used to mirror perfectly. Now, she wasn't sure she even recognized them. "Ready?" came Darius's calm voice beside her. She turned. He stood there composed as ever, sleeves rolled up, posture easy but powerful. "Ready as I'll ever be," she said, trying to smile. He nodded. "Remember, you don't have to sound perfect. Just sound real." She took a slow breath and followed him onto the stage. The applause was polite, formal, the kind that came more from respect than excitement. Darius took the podium first. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady and clear. "When I joined Sterling and Harlow, I said we would start looking at talent differently. That meant changing more than policies. It meant changing perspectives." He paused, letting the silence sit. "The truth is, we've built a culture that rewards appearance over ability, efficiency over empathy. And that's not innovation, that's inertia." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some executives shifted in their seats. Then he gestured toward Ava. "Someone who's seen that change up close is Ms. Ava Thompson, Senior Recruitment Lead. She's going to share her experience." The spotlight shifted. Ava stepped forward, gripping the microphone. Her heart thudded in her chest. "3 months ago," she began, "I thought I was great at my job. I thought I could walk into an interview and see who had potential. But what I really saw was comfort. People who looked like what I expected success to look like." The audience went silent. She could feel their discomfort, but she didn't stop. "I once turned down someone who was more qualified, more capable, and more visionary than most of us in this room. Why? Because I didn't see him. I saw my assumptions." She glanced toward Darius. He was watching her quietly, encouraging. "And when that person became my boss," she continued with a small, wry smile, "I finally learned that talent doesn't always come in a familiar package. Sometimes, it comes with a story you didn't bother to read." The room was silent, utterly still. Ava looked around the sea of faces. Recruiters she'd trained, managers she'd impressed, partners she'd once idolized. "If you're recruiting for this company," she said softly, "remember this. Potential has no profile." Then she stepped back. The pause that followed was long. Then, slowly, people began to clap. It wasn't thunderous, but it was real, genuine. Darius returned to the podium. His voice was calm, steady, full of quiet pride. Growth doesn't start in the hiring office, he said. It starts in the heart. This company will only move forward when we stop asking who fits and start asking who belongs. The applause grew louder now, spreading through the hall like a wave. Ava stood beside him, feeling something she hadn't in years. Not validation, not superiority, but peace. For the first time, her success wasn't built on being right. It was built on being honest. After the session, people came up to her, recruiters, interns, even a few executives, thanking her for what she said. She realized that by exposing her own flaws, she'd opened the door for others to face theirs. Later that day, as the crowd dispersed, Darius approached her. "You did well," he said simply. She smiled. "I just told the truth." He nodded. "That's the hardest part." As he turned to leave, she stopped him. "Darius?" He looked back. I don't know if I ever said this properly, but thank you for not giving up on me." He smiled faintly. Change isn't about giving people what they deserve. It's about giving them the chance to deserve more. She nodded, her throat tight. "Guess I still have a lot to learn." Darius chuckled softly. "So do I. The difference is, now we're learning together." A year later, Sterling and Harlow Consulting no longer looked or felt like the same company. The lobby that once felt like a fortress of marble and ego now buzzed with genuine energy. New voices, new faces, new ideas. The air felt lighter, more alive. Posters of polished executives had been replaced with portraits of teams, engineers, designers, analysts, people from every background imaginable. And near the entrance, engraved on a new silver plaque, were the words that now defined the firm's philosophy. Potential has no profile. The King's Standard. Darius King had never asked for that phrase to bear his name, but the company had insisted. It wasn't just a slogan. It was a shift in identity. Inside the newly renovated boardroom, sunlight reflected off the glass table as the leadership team gathered for the quarterly meeting. Darius sat at the head, relaxed but focused, scanning through reports. Across from him, Ava Thompson was presenting the latest hiring metrics. Her voice was confident, her tone clear. "In the last 12 months," she said, "we've increased our diverse hiring rate by 46%. Employee retention is at a record high. Productivity in the consulting teams has grown by nearly 30%. The CEO smiled proudly. "Impressive work, Ava. Truly. You've built something special." She glanced toward Darius, who gave her a quiet nod of approval. "Actually," Ava said, "we built it. Together." After the meeting, as the executives filed out, Darius and Ava remained behind. For a moment, they simply stood in the quiet hum of the room. Two professionals bound not by guilt or status, but by understanding. "You've changed this place," she said softly. "You changed me." Darius smiled faintly. "You did that yourself." "I just turned the mirror around." She laughed lightly. "You know, I used to think success was about perfection. Now I think it's about progress." "Exactly," Darius said. "The moment we stop learning, we stop leading." They walked together through the hallway, past new interns chatting near the elevator, past the wall of framed company values that now actually meant something. When they reached the lobby, Ava stopped beside the plaque. She brushed her fingers lightly across the words. "Potential has no profile." "It's strange," she said. "A year ago, I thought phrases like this were just branding." Darius chuckled. "Most companies do, until they meet someone who reminds them what they stand for." She looked up at him. "Do you ever think about that day, the interview?" His expression softened. "Sometimes, but not with anger. You can't change what happened, but you can honor it by what you do after." Ava nodded slowly, her voice quiet. "Then I guess this—" She gestured around the lobby, the busy offices, the plaque. "This is our apology, turned into action." He smiled. "That's the only kind that matters." They stepped outside into the bright afternoon. The city buzzed with life. Cars, chatter, the scent of roasted coffee from the cafe across the street. As they stood there watching the people pass by, Darius said quietly, "Funny thing about respect. You can't demand it. You earn it, one decision at a time." Ava looked at him thoughtfully. "And what about forgiveness?" He smiled. "That's what makes respect possible." They shared a quiet, understanding smile before parting ways. Not as recruiter and rejected candidate, not as boss and subordinate, but as equals. Darius turned the corner, his phone buzzing with a new message. Another partnership proposal? Another company asking for his help transforming their culture. He smiled to himself and kept walking. Back inside, Ava watched the reflection of the plaque shimmer in the glass wall. She wasn't proud because she'd changed a policy. She was proud because she'd changed herself. For the first time in her career, she didn't need to look for the right fit. She finally understood that the right fit was anyone with the courage to grow. And with that, Sterling and Harlow Consulting entered a new era, one built not on image, but on integrity. Because sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from success. They come from the people we almost overlooked.